Hello, everyone. I'm Rolanda, investor at Madrona, and excited to introduce you guys to what we're calling winner spotlights. So the first three that we have today are going to be Modal, Browserbase, and Aaru, including a couple companies that are building the enabling infrastructure for AI, as well as thinking through some tricky questions around simulating behavior. So really excited to introduce you first to Erik, CEO of Modal.
Really excited to show you a little bit what we're working on. Being in Seattle, it's a beautiful place. It's my first time, basically. I'm the founder of a company called Modal. We're based in New York. We've been around for about 4 or 5 years now. We basically build, the best way I think to put it is we build AI infrastructure. So you can put it, there's like a few different, we do a little bit of other stuff too. But AI infrastructure is kind of the core of it. We're about 70 people. We just announced our B round on Monday, actually, which is fun. Why did we start the company? My thesis is that a lot of traditional infrastructure does not scale to AI. And in particular, the developer experience just isn't there. And I'm going to say developer experience about 50 times in this presentation, so get used to it. But if you look at a lot of traditional infrastructure, like you start to run into a lot of issues when you try to apply it to AI. And with infrastructure, I mean the software really under the applications, right? So you got the applications on top. Those are things like generative media, large language models, vibe coding platforms, a bunch of stuff. We power a lot of those. And then we build the infrastructure layer below. And when I talk about existing infrastructure, I mean things like Kubernetes and Docker and things like that. We basically decided at some point, those systems just aren't that good for the types of new applications we're trying to build. So we're going to build a new layer. And in particular, one example, just not to get super deep into this, but if you work with one of these existing infrastructure platforms and you try to deploy a model, it is a nightmare. Like it takes hours or maybe days or something like that, right? And got to write some YAML, got to figure out stuff. And then you got to figure out how to scale it. So how do you scale this to 1,000 GPUs? Like what happens if your app goes viral and there's a bunch of there's a massive surge in demand, and so a lot of these types of issues, like both on the developer experience side and also on the productionization side, that was kind of our starting point. Like that's what we started thinking about when we started building Modal. And just to sort of contrast, and this is a lot of stuff, sorry for dumping like so much on this, but like basically the key point I'm trying to make here with all this text is a lot of traditional infrastructure. Kubernetes is fine for like backend applications, when you have IO intensive stuff and you want to deploy something and you do mostly CRUD app or whatever. But again, once you start to push into these like AI use cases, you just don't, you kind of lose the developer experience, you lose a lot of the other challenges. So that was a big gap we saw about 4 or 5 years ago, starting with the developer experience. And this kind of builds on my experience, basically. I was at Spotify for many years. I think this is the most relevant experience. I built the music recommendation system there. And my experience building that was basically, I ended up spending 90% of the time on the infrastructure, not the actual, like the system itself. And I realized there's probably 1,000 other companies out there having the same issue. And so someone should just build that platform for them so they don't have to think about infrastructure. And that's what Modal is today. So we focus on developers. And we focus on, basically my thesis, people talk about, is AI going to take over developers or whatever? I don't think so. I think there's going to be a lot of developers writing a lot of code. And they're all going to write, a lot of them are going to start building AI applications, of course. And they're going to need a place to run this code. So we're not like AI API. We don't try to put a bunch of models behind, it's not like a low code or no code stuff. We're very proudly like high code. We love engineers. I'm an engineer. I still write code. I wrote some code this morning. And those are our users. And we try to make their life a little bit easier. And by doing that, we almost think of it as like an operating system. Because what we do under the hood is like, we're almost like a cloud provider. Like we basically like aggregate capacity. We use a lot of different cloud providers, but we aggregate capacity from them. And then we basically expose that to our application developers, our customers, in a way we don't have to think about it. So we're not just the sort of the software system. We're also the almost like a cloud provider, but a layer above. Like we think that there's a role to be played for AWS, of course, and GCP and many others. They're very good at having that physical infrastructure, but they have never delivered on good developer experience. Like, and I love AWS and all these tools, like for what it enables me to build. But in the 15 years that I've used AWS, it's challenging sometimes. So we build that layer above that makes it possible for people to build all kinds of applications. We power a lot of different stuff, inference, training. We have a sandbox product that powers a lot of vibe coding platforms that does code execution. A lot of batch processing. We have some really exciting customers in computational biotech that uses us. We launched a notebook product recently. So we're trying to build kind of like a whole suite of tools, like a whole, basically like a platform. I already said developer experience 5,000 times, but I'll say it more. What we started with was really focusing on nailing that. DX. I'll say DX going forward. And that forced us to really think about that fast feedback loop. How do you take code and run it in the cloud so fast that it almost feels like it's running locally? That is a very hard problem, as it turns out. So we found ourselves just a few months in when we started this company, realizing you can't build new infrastructure on top of old infrastructure. So in order to build new infrastructure, you kind of have to throw out the old infrastructure. So we built basically our own file system, our own container runtime, and a whole lot of other stuff. And that was a lot of work. We basically spent 2 years in a cave building this, and our investors weren't super happy about that. But once we emerged out of that cave, we had a platform that actually enabled us to do a lot of really cool stuff. And now we've added a lot of other stuff. We can do GPU snapshotting. We can do extremely fast container cold start. We can scale up and down super fast. If you need 1,000 GPUs, we can get you that typically within a couple of minutes. If you need 100 GPUs, we can get you that within seconds. So we got some really cool stuff around managing that scale and stuff like that. And there's a lot of benefits of us sort of aggregating both demand and supply, right? I really don't think it makes sense, this sort of, what we've seen in the last couple of years, that engineers or startups go out and make big reservation and they all manage their own static pool. What if you can just aggregate that? There's some obvious benefits of this resource pooling, just from a resource utilization point of view, and so you can sort of run things at much higher utilization. And doing that, we had to build our own very complex system to manage all that capacity. It's basically an optimization problem. It's kind of fun. And so I think Modal basically today breaks down into kind of two facets. So part of it is we manage all that capacity, scale up and down continuously, lots of tens of thousands of GPUs up and down, CPUs. And then we have a Python SDK. We actually have a Go and a TypeScript SDK too, but most of our users are ML engineers, so they're all Python users. And that Python SDK basically makes it very easy to take code and run stuff in the cloud and not have to think about anything. And people run it at very large scale, thousands of GPUs. We have customers like Suno, running tens of thousands of music. They do AI-generated music, but also a lot of companies using us for computational biotech. Talked to a company the other day. They're using us to literally cure cancer, which I thought was very cool. So we have everything from face swapping to curing cancer. It's the whole spectrum. A lot of vibe coding platforms also. We have a product for safe code execution. So that's kind of a new use case that we see a lot of traction from. So older mentioned Suno, Substack. Meta is actually using Modal right now for code execution in the reinforcement learning research. A lot of other customers like Ramp and Lovable. I'm proud because Lovable is Swedish like me. So they're a big customer vibe coding platform. And just to kind of summarize, if you ask our customers, why do they use us? It's because they can run their own code. We're just a platform. We don't care what we run. We treat it as a black box. It's super general purpose. They can use it for all kinds of stuff. Developer experience, fully usage-based. They don't have to make any sort of commitments or reservations or anything. And then we have this we solve this problem of GPU liquidity. How do you try it? I don't know if you're engineers, but either way, pip install Modal, go to your terminal and just write that. And then we give everyone some credits. You can play around with it. And then once you deploy something in production, it scales up. Then we'll have a talk about the enterprise plan. And that's it. Thank you so much. Feel free to stay in touch.
So I think from an enterprise availability perspective, what about all the compliances and stuff when somebody uses your platform? So we are an enterprise startup, so.
Yeah, we got SOC 2, Type 1, Type 2. We got HIPAA. Might do FedRAMP later this year. We are a multi-tenant platform. Some companies are, uncomfortable with that, but as it turns out, there's actually no compliance reason why that gets in the way of things. So I think that's more of like a mindset, really. But all the compliance stuff, we're working on it. We have a lot of that stuff. We're going to get some more, ISO, whatever, 86001 or whatever they're called. Like all of these things, like they're all coming. The ones we don't have yet.
Cool. Thank you.
Thanks. Awesome. Thank you so much.
Great, thank you, Erik. And I think he alluded to it, but they are one of the newly minted AI startup unicorns. So another round of applause for Modal. Awesome. So our next winner spotlight is Paul at Browserbase. If you guys don't know, they are building some critical infrastructure for the browser. So welcome, Paul, to the stage.
Amazing. Well, we are not a unicorn, and you are a lot of investors here, so it's all upside, right? This is the entry point to talk about Browserbase. I'm going to spend 90% of this talking about the future. I think it applies to a lot of infrastructure companies here. And I'm going to spend 10% talking about Browserbase. You can find out more on their website, listen to a podcast. You're here to learn about the future. Here's what we're going to talk about. So to me, the future of software is software doing work on our behalfs. And a lot of the work that you and I do every single day happens in a web browser. Going to Salesforce and updating a row, going to, in my case, the Delaware franchise tax website and updating my cap table, right? There's all this painful work we do in web browsers that we'd rather have AI do on behalf of ourselves. But if the future of software is going to do work on our behalf, and a lot of the work that we do is in a web browser, we need to give this future of software, this AI-powered software, a web browser, and that's what we do at Browserbase. And really, I just want you to think of the scale of the opportunity of doing work on our behalf. I mean, RPA, BPO, this has all been around for a while. At dinner last night, someone said, well, isn't AI agents just RPA plus plus? I thought that was an interesting perspective. But the scale of the amount of knowledge work who are just taking information in one piece of software and putting it into another is massive, And even if AI adds a 100x speed up of this work, it's still a billions and billions and millions of dollar size market. Now, at Browserbase, we're not addressing that directly. We're infrastructure. We help companies build these applications. But as you think about it more and more, how can we leverage knowledge workers? This future is not going to be replacing the work they're doing, but actually allow them to do a lot more work where their AI can be dispatched and do it on their behalf. This is happening, and we've seen it in production. In Andre Karpathy's Software 3.0 talk, I highly recommend watching it. He talked about this future of software where software needs to be rewritten. And this Software 3.0 is different from Software 2.0 because it has tools. And in this agentic software world, you are going to click a button, and that button might dispatch a bunch of different smaller sub-agents. It's not going to be a chat interface that you're maybe familiar with in some of these popular projects like OpenAI. But it's going to be just more powerful buttons. You're going to click apply for a business, and it's going to go submit something to the California Secretary of State. It's going to go spin up your bank account. It's going to go pull in all your information from your incorporation docs, all in one button press. This is a much more powerful type of software. And if software is going to be rewritten, if this agentic feature is happening, and a lot of the work that you and I do every day is in a browser, we believe software is going to need a browser, and that's where Browserbase comes in. We're building this browser infrastructure product that helps give software, AI agents, and other applications capabilities to browse the web, and not just read and research and take information, but actually write, click buttons, upload files, download things. I just want to make it clear we're not reinventing the browser. Somebody texted me recently saying, hey, congrats on the acquisition by Atlassian. That is a different browser company. We are not building a browser. We are building browser infrastructure. And the interesting thing about browser infrastructure is that the web that is built, it needs a browser to run. You don't need to reinvent the browser. But running a consumer browser at scale in a cloud environment is very, very challenging. You might not know this, but Linux does not have emojis installed by default. If you want to support sans script fonts, you're going to have to add some extra work into a cloud environment. And a lot of the work we do is on this very specific type of infrastructure. And that's really exciting. Databases have been done 10 times over. But when you can have an opportunity to build a category and actually do R&D on a new type of primitive infrastructure, which is browsers in our case, you can find a lot of really interesting insights. Running browsers at scale is hard, especially because we're used to looking at a browser. At Browserbase, we have a lot of observability, security, sandboxing, guardrails to make AI browsing safe, secure, and reliable. And you might be saying, Paul, okay, this is pie in the sky, but like really, this is not science fiction. We've seen Fortune 500 companies using agentic browsing workflows, within their companies. And honestly, it often starts internally. They might have an internal piece of software, like the parental leave application, that requires 20 steps, and they want to build an AI agent to help people, get their parental leave approved. And these people are building internal applications using the best of the models and the best of infrastructure to actually automate that work and have these kind of interesting POCs. And the point I want to make here is that there's this rise of vibe coding. And I know vibe coding is a sensitive word, but I saw a job description on the Visa website recently for a principal vibe coder. And I thought that was really interesting. It's principal level. It probably sounds expensive, right? And I kind of wondered why, and I talked to one of our largest customers about the state of buying B2B software, and he said, listen, Paul, I'm frustrated. I'm getting fleeced. I buy this software that is AI powered, and then I can't change the prompts. I ask for a feature, it's going to take 3 months. Why not put one of my engineers to build the equivalent type of software using the same models and the same infrastructure that this B2B application is doing? And I think this is becoming more and more popular. People are actually building their own software internally. Why buy something off the shelf when you could build something completely bespoke and use the infrastructure companies like a Modal, like a Browserbase that exists out there, alongside the best-in-class models to get something that's almost as good? And this is happening. Everyone is a vibe coder in 2025. And the point I want to make is that you're vibe coding, I'm going to use this word a lot, you're vibe coding the business logic, the front end, the UI, the simple parts, but you're not vibe coding your database. You're not vibe coding Kubernetes. You still want to have the infrastructure, this critical path stuff, be very, very reliable and scalable. And AI is just not there yet. It's not going to build you a new type of database. This graphic, I really love it. I've used it in every fundraising deck I've ever talked about. Consumers want to use these tools. Tools are built by the builders, but everything in this generated land in the middle can be easily generated and slotted in. The infrastructure, this kind of like primitive, is really what you want to use to power this future of software. And in the world of software 3.0, we're going to see more and more software being created. The rate of creation of software is going to grow exponentially. And that means the opportunity for infrastructure companies has never been greater. If there's going to be 100x more software in the world, and we all kind of agree that the infrastructure is an important part of it, you better believe a lot of people, maybe not all of them, but a lot of them, are going to be buying infrastructure and embedding in their product. OK, one final point on this kind of whole thing, back to the browser stuff. The DMV is not going to have an MCP server, at least maybe not under this administration, right? It's not going to have APIs. And when we look at the whole internet right now, there's just so much opportunity for automation and integration with AI that doesn't exist right now because of the lack of APIs. And we think that the browser really is this generic surface area. In this very near future, the models are going to be just as good, if not better, at browsing than we are. And if the models can browse just as well as we do, we might not need to rebuild the internet for AI. Instead, we could let AI use the same internet as us, because we're going to be the slow ones browsing. And we think the browser is this bridge to the internet that already exists. Sure, there's going to be so much new software created, but what we think is true is that there's going to be a lot of existing software, a lot of existing websites. This is especially true internationally. One of our customers helps do procurement for Mexican lumber mills. And you would not believe the websites I've seen. They're not AI first at all, but it works when you can let the AI control the browser the same way you and I do. I know I'm beating a dead horse, but let's just talk a little bit about what we do here at Browserbase. So we have 3 products. We have Browserbase, which is our infrastructure product. We have Stagehand, it's our open source framework. And then we have Director.ai, which is something that if you're not technical, you can use that today. And I hope you give it a try. So Browserbase is the browser infrastructure product. We really thought from the ground up, and similar to Erik in a lot of ways on his infrastructure product, how do you actually build something specifically designed for running browsers at scale? And browsers are like little nuclear bombs. AI can go to any website in the world. Chrome is the most attacked surface area of any application out there, right? So you need to make it secure, you need to make it sandbox, you need to make it fast, you make it reliable, you make it trusted. And with Browserbase's infrastructure platform, our customers really love using it because they don't want to build an in-house team around spinning up the specialized piece of infrastructure. They want to plug it into their agent and let it go browse for them. So that's Browserbase's infrastructure product. Stagehand is our open source framework. We describe Stagehand as a code interface for the browser. In our industry, there are 3 legacy frameworks, one called Puppeteer, Playwright, and Selenium. You go look them up. They aren't built to be AI first, and what we found when building this infrastructure is that the control plane for controlling the browser was really lacking. So Stagehand is very popular, 400,000 downloads, used by developers all over the place. And then finally, Director is this agent builder. So we want to help the vibe coders build more tools to automate. So we built this really nice UI powered by Stagehand, powered by Browserbase, and it's completely free, to let people get started and find that moment of magic where they can see the browser go, apply to college on their behalf, and then export that code and run that code on our browser-based infrastructure. I'm at my 5 seconds left, but I'll end with this. This is the future. The future of software is software doing work on your behalf, and we really hope to power it Browserbase. I'm not going to be around too much longer after this talk, but if you want to get in touch, my email is paul@browserbase.com, and I hope to hear from you. Thank you all so much.
Right now, a lot of these computer use agents for the browser are quite slow. What are some of the ways that you've made Browserbase fast?
Yeah, this is actually the secret sauce. He asked, how did we overcome the challenges of making computer use faster? With Stagehand, our framework, not only does the AI kind of generate the steps, but we cache those steps. We remember those steps. So if AI is doing the same workflow a second time, or computer use is doing the same workflow a second time, it's going to replay those steps for you instead of going to inference. Our goal is to use as little inference as possible. Try and remember every step taken as possible and serve that to a customer via cache instead of going back to the inference, which might be slow or unreliable. Cool. Thank you all so much. Appreciate it.
Move a little bit up the stack and talk about simulating behavior. So excited to introduce Ned to the stage.
Thank you guys so much for having us today. This is a really wonderful event. Been super, super cool hearing about everything, the accomplishments of some other winners and whatnot. It's been really, really awesome. So thanks again for taking the time to listen. These 6 scenarios, industries, sorts of things on the screen that you see right here, what do they have in common? Behavior. Behavior, 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 behavior. Whether you shine shoes or you trade stocks or you sell cars or sodas or whatever it may be, your entire job is to understand what people will do. Does not matter what industry you play in, that's what it is. Humans have been chasing this idea for thousands of years, since the day that we had oracles in ancient Greece, and actually probably before then, we've been trying to tackle this idea. The fundamental understanding to the work that we do is that behavior can be represented through language. And as we're all talking about AI and language models today, you can probably imagine where this is going. But a model trained off enough examples of human behavior is able to represent it if done in the right way. And why is this so important? Truth is, humans are terrible at representing their opinions. We lie. I mean, raise the hands right now. Who in the last, year has responded to a survey? I'm very curious. Okay, we've got a few folks. I don't know what that says, but no. The truth is that humans lie, right? And the majority of them will not respond to surveys. What we've seen, and frankly, there are some other folks in this organization or at this conference who have done some really, really fantastic work around this kind of stopgap solution, which is going from how do we talk to people and get their opinions to doing that faster, which is awesome, right? But you're making the assumption that those people's opinions are accurate or valuable to a business, which frequently they aren't. The saying that we like to have at Aaru is that humans don't scale, so we recreate them at scale, right? We lie. We do. We lie. And even if you don't lie, you frequently can't be accessed, as we just kind of talked about. People move incredibly, incredibly slowly. And we are really, really bad at imagining what we'll do in hypothetical scenarios, which we'll talk about in a little bit. The kind of underlying fundamental thesis that we talk about today is that the ceiling of asking humans what other humans think has been reached. And it's extremely, extremely low. Simulation doesn't have one. I'll do another example really quickly. Ask a quick question. What does the word mediocre mean to you? Mediocre, a mediocre product. What does that mean? Scale 0 to 10. What number would you give it? 2. What about you? 3. What are you right there? 3. John, what about you in the back? Maybe he's in a different room. What did you say? 4? 4. 4 different people, 3 different answers. You can ask people the exact same question in the exact same way at the exact same time and get incredibly different answers. Businesses on the scale of Coca-Cola and McDonald's, people who make hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars a year, are basing decisions off of what people say, which is effectively pure intuition, right? Things aren't quantifiable to the extent where humans are not standardized, right? And all the other issues that we just talked about. What we build to get around this is a software that we call multi-agent simulation, or multi-agent interface for large-scale simulation. In short form, what this kind of means is if you have a language model, right, that you give a simulated demographic and personality or underlying trait set, demographic, psychographic, et cetera, and then you give it a task to complete, like responding to a question, people are going to price a product, a survey, and add whatever it may be, it becomes what we'll refer to as an AI agent or a synthetic respondent, right? And we talk about the idea of organizing thousands of these simulated respondents in parallel. It's the idea of organizing them and then using them to predict what populations will do and their behavior, and as a result, predict the world's events. So we've done a lot of really interesting work. As a business in the prediction and simulation space, the number one thing that you have to focus on is trust and accuracy. And frequently enough, we had a great opportunity to do that. We started our business in 2024. And as you can all imagine, the two things everyone spoke about that year were politics and AI. We got to do both. We started our business in the political sector by predicting elections. The first result we ever put out publicly was a New York Democratic primary. We were not 5% or 1% off. We were 371 votes from the final vote count. And that's not because we took a representative sample of 250 or 500 or talked to a single person. It's because we used our system to simulate every single one of those tens of thousands of individuals in that voting constituency. And we've continued to do that since. We ended up working at one point, maybe I shouldn't say this within this room, 3 sides of the San Francisco mayoral campaign at the same time, and then continue to move on from there, spread throughout politics, and now sell from everyone from the Fortune 50 to Global 2000 across major CPGs, dating apps, media entertainment companies, utilities, hedge funds, the whole 9 yards we'll jump into in a moment. We can talk about a bit about benchmarking and accuracy as well, and we can jump back to them. I'm sure people have questions. I think the most interesting part about the work that we do is obviously the use cases and the incredible, incredible spread. Right? We'll go back to that first page that we talked about, with that first one talking about the generational wealth transfer. Right? We have a lot of customers in financial services, consumer FS, wealth management, all sorts of different interesting stuff around this. People are not honest about what they'll do with their money, and frequently they don't even know. Right? And so it becomes incredibly difficult to craft major strategy around things that are at the best they are a guess. And so we've been working with a lot of different organizations to do everything from simulating people who you'd never be able to access, 5 to 7 million investable assets, whatever it may be, to understanding value propositions and craft major business strategies after simulating the behavior of potential customers. Some really, really interesting stuff that I might get some fun questions on that we've also done is on understanding and mitigating behavior in sort of a negative aspect, which is how do you understand if people are going to protest on a campus? And if you decide to deploy police officers at one part of campus versus another, is that resource allocation actually going to stop people from committing violent acts? All sorts of really, really fascinating stuff that you can do with simulation. This is another really, really cool one. We recently did a 35 countrywide alcohol moderation sim. Right? Not only is this totally impossible in traditional research because you can't access 35 countries at scale. Their traditional plan for this major organization is going to take them $6 million in multiple years to complete. But people are not going to be honest if they're alcoholics. They're certainly not going to be honest if they smoke weed in a country it's not legal. And they definitely aren't going to be honest if they're on Ozempic or Wegovy. And so the entire alcohol industry as a whole is really, really scared about these alternatives and other sorts of weight loss drugs mitigating people's ability to pursue and purchase their products. We ended up discovering after running a sim over the course of these multiple different countries and over the course of time that you can do with our software that despite people drinking less on occasion when they go out to drink, if they're on GLP-1s, because they have newfound confidence, they end up going out more frequently throughout the year. And not only do they consume a similar amount of alcohol over the course of a year, but the people around them do as well. We're actually working with this business now to craft better for you, kind of like hard seltzers, lower calorie tequila drinks with higher alcohol content, and all sorts of really, really interesting stuff around that. This is another fascinating example. I'm sure there's some folks, I personally have no ties to the private aviation market, but this is a really, really fascinating use case for a couple reasons, right? You can't talk to people who are willing to purchase planes at scale, right? 50 to 100 million net worth, 100 to 300 million net worth, 300 million plus were the segments that we used our system to generate. And we were able to get some really, really interesting insights into why people decide to purchase versus chartering a plane. But the more interesting aspect to this project is that this was ran earlier, actually at the end of last year. Under Trump's first term, everyone was very excited in this space because there was 100% bonus depreciation. You could write off the entire value of a jet within the first year. It'd gone down again, and there was rumors to say that, hey, Trump might put it back to 100% under his second term. Well, if you're evaluating an asset in the private aviation space that revolves around people chartering instead of buying planes, you need to know whether or not those tax laws are going to make an impact. So humans are also incredibly, incredibly bad at representing their behavior in hypothetical scenarios. You can now use simulation to get around that, right? You're no longer asking people to imagine what they would do in some sort of scenario with a tax law. You can just contextualize your models. And so all of a sudden, they just are. Now, are you buying a plane? Are these tax laws going to make an impact? All sorts of really, really cool stuff. I'll jump here to the end because I know I'm up on time in just a moment. But the truth is that like there are a lot of people playing in what is now kind of developed as like the synthetic research space, right? There are very people entirely abstracting themselves from human behavior. There are a lot of people, okay, let's facilitate surveys faster, all sorts of aspects like that. But what you get is the same amount of bias you have with humans, just at a scale and a much faster speed enhanced by AI. We work off exclusively what we call ground truth data. So we never look at what people say they do or who they say they are. We don't look at social media. We don't look at Facebook profiles. We look at ground distributions of what makes up a population, which allows us to generate anybody we want, from a congressperson to a population of monster-drinking dog walkers who live in Brooklyn, right? And I can give you 10,000 of those. In the same sentence of that, we also train our models off exclusively outcomes-based data. This means that I don't look at a survey. I'm not going to look at a focus group. I'm not going to look at, a poll. I'm going to look at a sales result, a click-through rate, a vote count, and other sorts of aspects like that. So we abstract away all the bias from our models to be able to get incredibly, incredibly accurate reads on human behavior. Thank you guys so much for listening. Yeah, really appreciate it. Time for a question? Do you have time for questions? Or? Yeah, please.
What makes your simulations accurate?
Yeah, it kind of gets back to that aspect, which is that we track off of exclusively outcomes-based data. The way we do sales with every single one of our customers is that we never expect them to trust us at first, ever. I will go, like the first way we got our first customer in politics, I went to a senator, I told them how they were going to vote in the next 2 sessions by simulating a model of them. And we do the same thing with people's NPS scores. If I want to go sell to a CPG organization, I'll go on their website, I'll run a simulation, find their worst performing SKU, and then tell them that I'm going to sell them their NPS metrics, so I'll go sell it to their competitor. Because I don't need any data from a customer to be able to get that amount of information, it creates this incredibly, incredibly useful tool where I can prove accuracy to internal metrics people already know without requiring anything from them. You kind of can't argue with the numbers. Yeah. Maybe one more question? I saw another hand up. Yeah.
Really incredible stuff, by the way.
Thank you.
So one question for you. So I think most of your examples were testing some kind of messaging. How do you do with multimodal content, and can you do what parts of my video are going to resonate, what not? Like what level of depth can you go to?
Yeah, 100%. So the systems that we build are natively multimodal. We actually have done some really, really interesting work with a couple major movie studios that you guys would probably know, doing a lot of trailer testing and other sorts of aspects like that. But we do this very, very frequently. I mean, even when we were working in politics, paid media is an incredibly important thing to work in. And so we've done a bunch of ad testing, video testing, audio. We're actually starting a joint venture with a very large mixed media kind of like audio company right now that produces music and other sorts of aspects to help break artists, which has been really cool, and predict behavior around whether or not people will go viral, which has been super awesome. So yeah, thanks so much for the question. Really appreciate it, guys. Thank you so much.
I'm Sabrina Albert. I'm one of the partners at Madrona, and for our next IA40 Winter Spotlight, very excited to welcome to the stage Arjun Prakash, who's the CEO and co-founder of Distyl. Distyl was an early stage winner this year, but actually just announced a large $175 million financing round at a $1.8 billion valuation, which I think puts them at the later stage of winners now. So very excited to hear from Arjun, who will also be joined by his colleague Kulbir.
I'm really excited to talk to you a little bit about at least what we are seeing with artificial intelligence. And I want to do it by almost starting at a philosophical point of view of what is the broader paradigm shift that we are actually embarking upon when it comes to enterprise AI, and then what are some of the lessons learned from having done that now over the last few years. So I'll start with something that I think you're all hopefully believers in. You are here at a VC event. I think you believe there is something special happening. AI is a paradigm shift. But let's unpack that a little bit beyond the hype that there is. So I think it's fair to say that the Valley and technology companies have produced technology consistently, and this is something we've all come to expect. But some technologies are upgrades. Windows XP to Windows Vista is an upgrade. But there are some technologies that are a shift. They change how you do work. And when you really think about it, let's go back in history. There were upgrades on the horse-drawn carriage, and then there was the car. And every time there's been a shift, you've had to re-architect how the world looks. Look at Houston and look at Paris. They look very different. Have you seen a spatial map of Houston as a city? Anybody? It looks very different from Boston. It's because it was architected for the highway. the car. When you look at one of these shifts, consistently, they always look very different. And I want to talk a little bit about the part of the world that we care a lot about in terms of how AI is going to impact it, and that's the enterprise. The modern American enterprise, as you and I know it, was probably last re-architected sometime around the Industrial Revolution. And there were many advantages that came out of it. And one of the most relevant concepts is that of the assembly line. The assembly line is actually the construct that has informed almost all of your org structures. Centralized decision-making, decentralized execution. Think about an assembly line. Different parts of the assembly line do not need to know what each other are doing. And when you operate that way, you can really hyper-invest in optimizing, and scale up production massively. It's what allowed us to win World War II. It's what allowed us to really scale up in the 20th century and dominate productivity. And it's been great. But it created silos. Each of those decentralized execution business units ended up becoming a silo. How many of you are a leader at or run a company that's older than 5 years old? OK, that's a fair number of you all. You probably have silos at your company. I think it's fair to say that your different teams don't always talk to each other in the best way possible. There's inefficiencies in handoff. And there's also inefficiencies in technology. Each silo probably picked a certain business process and a certain tool to do the job. They hyper-optimize it. And now the inefficiencies are always in the handoffs and how the organization works. And this is really where we see the big re-architecture opportunity in AI. To really appreciate this, it's best to look at the counterfactual. There is no shortage of companies that are coming to you today and talking about how they're going to upgrade the business process in a single silo. Salesforce is going to come and make your CRM processes 20% more efficient. Atlassian will make your Jira development processes 20% more efficient. Workday will make your Workday HR process 20% more efficient. I may have just taken out the last panel in one swoop. But with that having been said, I think the bigger opportunity here really is in re-architecting across the silos and trying to connect the dots with artificial intelligence to actually try to reimagine what a modern enterprise could look like. And we're seeing this continuously in all of the Fortune 500s that are winning and that are just hanging on. The winning enterprises are not just asking, how can I roll out Copilot or a SaaS tool, make that individual process 10% more efficient. They're instead asking, what happens when I connect the dots across the silo, reimagine the business product, and make the entire enterprise 10x more efficient? This is really what I think the bigger opportunity is. And this leads us to Distyl AI and our mission. We chose this very intentionally. Our mission is to re-architect entire industries and their leaders for frontier technologies. The frontier technology of our time is artificial intelligence, and we want to be the partner to these enterprises as they think about re-architecting themselves. We do it today by partnering with their C-suite and their teams in scoping out these hero missions of what it would mean to reimagine their core business operations and their new category of products. And then we undertake a combination of services with forward deployed engineering and products that are targeted at their subject matter experts to actually actuate that transformation in as little as a quarter for the first set of outcomes and no more than a small handful of years for the full transformation. We've done this at scale. We work with many of the Fortune 500, including one of the largest telcos, most of the large healthcare payers, multiple companies in manufacturing. And the thing that I'm most proud about in this entire journey is we have had a 100% go-to-production rate. This is something we just at Distyl took for granted as engineers and technologists. But against a backdrop of news of 95% of projects failing, I think this is one of the things that the Distyl team is most proud about. So what I want to really end this talk with is one insight about what has allowed us to achieve that I hope you can all take away and put into practice at your companies. And then one of our company principles is show, don't tell. And we'd like to end with a small demonstration of an outcome. When you really think about what it means for these large language models to be effective employees of your company, the single most important thing is you need to give them the right context. The ability for a model to actually carry out a task is truly, at this point, a consequence of giving it the right context for it to be able to do the work. And the best curators of this context in your organization are your subject matter experts. These are employees at your enterprises. They're the clinicians, they're the contact center agents, they are the construction workers. They know how to do the work, they've been doing the work, and capturing context from them and changing their job from people doing tasks to instead curators and maintainers of context is one of the largest change management exercises that we see at our transformations. And what that means for us as Distyl is we build products not for the engineers, not for the developers, but for those subject matter experts at those customers to be able to effectively engage with context. A few things happen when you think about the problem this way. Number one, every time you have an AI agent that you want to do work, it's no longer a product management exercise of improving the accuracy of the model. You can now lean upon these hundreds, thousands, and sometimes hundreds of thousands of workers who've been doing the job to actually make them part of the initiative by having them engage on the context store to improve it and evaluate it. The reason why they're really good at this is because they've already been doing it. Every time you onboard a new employee at your company, you're going through this exercise of telling them what to do, telling them how to do it, pointing them to the tools that they're supposed to be using, and then as a good manager, you're evaluating the performance and giving them feedback. Does that sound familiar? Well, that's how you treat an AI agent. You give it context on what to do, how to do it, and then you evaluate its performance and give it the iterative feedback that's needed to get to very high accuracy. And at the pair that we were working with, clinicians were doing prior authorizations and claims review. Now they're maintaining the context store and have changed their job to being evaluators. And AI is doing it at much faster speed and at larger scale. And these clinicians are actually happier because they're doing the job they actually signed up for. At the large telecommunication firm, contact center agents are changing their job from taking calls, especially the manual ones, to being maintainers of context and creating new ways in which they can serve clients, which increases job satisfaction and allows the organization to take on even more scale. This is the single most important insight that has allowed us to do what we've done. It's not necessarily a model make-through. It's not even necessarily a technological invention. It's products and engagement models that engage these workers that already exist at your company. So with that, I'm going to pause. I'm going to hand it over to my colleague, Kulbir, to give you a little demonstration.
Awesome. Thanks, Arjun. Can we get a round of applause for Arjun first? Awesome. All right, my name is Kulbir Singh. I work on productization of contact center. And today, we're going to be looking into a couple of our ideas for what the contact center of tomorrow looks like. So contact center today, it's big, it's complex, it's expensive, especially in the old-fashioned manner. But if we reframe the issue, contact center could reduce churn, it could drive revenue, and it could build loyalty for your brand. So what we do at Distyl now is to think about contact center in the enablement of the SME. How do we take their existing workflows and ensure that they can build solutions instantly? We offer an end-to-end solution that operates at scale, enables SMEs to take their tacit knowledge, implement it into our system, self-improve that system over time, and deploy it to millions of people all at once. So let's jump into it. Imagine I'm a product owner at a telecom company, and I want to build a workflow. The AI agents that are researching current production logs offer recommendations about what it is that could be a potential solution. Let's do international data charges. I've had them. Anyone that's traveled has probably had them. And we can go ahead and choose that as an initial solution. Now with access to documents and tooling, we can go ahead and add additional logic that's going to go ahead and consolidate into the core context of that problem. Now, as an SME, I can know exactly what's in these docs, or I can choose the ones as it recommends. The entire point here is that we can enable any SME to spot an issue, and instead of waiting for approvals, go ahead and start spinning up a solution. Now, as this generates, I want to highlight that our customer learnings, our forward deployed motions, and our talks with SMEs have given us the opportunity to understand exactly what their pain points are and make those the evaluations of that exact system. I find it really, really important to make sure that the things that we're testing our system on for success are not just the components and metrics that we have on the back end, but the same pain points that exist in contact center today. So when we run those evaluations, we end up in a state where you have automated evals, compliance checks, guardrails, legal, QA, et cetera. And all of that happens agentically. Now, instead of waiting for 10 approvals, I, as an SME, in a matter of about a minute, have gotten the opportunity to create a solution for an existing challenge that was recognized and go ahead and take it live. So at Distyl, we believe that in order to best empower our clients, we must give them the systems, the tooling, and all of the components that are necessary for an SME to step up into using their tacit knowledge to action on the system itself. This creates for faster iteration. Oh, it's so awkward. Hello?
Hello, calling from support. We noticed international roaming charges spiking your postpaid bill. Can I help you reduce this? It'll take under a minute.
I'm in the middle of a demo. Make it quick.
Absolutely. First, a simple option. We can add data passes when you travel, so you avoid pay-as-you-go roaming.
I thought you were reducing my bill.
Yes, this would be an overall decrease. Another option is an international plan that includes global talk and data for just $10 more a month. It prevents those surprise roaming charges and keeps your current benefits. Want me to switch you?
That works. I'll take it.
Done. Effective now. I'll send a quick summary. Thanks, and good luck with the demo.
So that's the speed of production. We take simple SME knowledge, we take problems that exist, and we take them to production within a matter of minutes. They all meet a certain standard of quality, and we ensure that these can get implemented at scale right away. This is the decentralization, the taking away of silos of data, the enablement of an SME to go and make decisions that action on customers that they care about. Now, this system has already been implemented at scale. What we see now has been a contact center for tomorrow that enables a customer to have a dynamic experience across any issue they have, a team that can go ahead and launch solutions live right away, and a company that has a contact center that's self-improving and increasingly pays for itself over time. Now, the insights that are being generated, they're the ones that are coming from a singular call. But what I want to highlight is that if you can imagine this as a single call with recommendations to a system, now imagine this already implemented for tens of millions of conversations in just a few months. We are Distyl, and thank you.
So we have two more winner spotlights, Dropzone and Clarify. So if you guys haven't heard enough about agents today, there's another company that wants to talk about agents here, but specifically in the security space. So really excited to introduce Edward, who's building AI SOC agents, and he can tell you all about it.
Hello, I'm Edward, I'm the founder and CEO of Dropzone AI. So cyber defenders have been battling attackers since the dawn of the digital age, but we're not winning the war. In fact, every single one of us right now have probably more than 10 years of free credit monitoring thanks to the various settlements from the past data breaches. And McKinsey estimates that in 2025, there will be more than $10 trillion of damages caused by cyber attacks. So why is stopping cyber attacks so difficult? Cybersecurity is a cat and mouse game. Attackers only have to be right once, when defenders need to be right every single time. It takes orders of magnitude of more resources to stop attacks than to perform them. And it's getting worse. With Gen AI, attacks are becoming easier and cheaper. So every day, the demand on security teams' time and resources are growing much faster than the increase in headcount and budget. Cybersecurity analysts are overwhelmed by security alerts, and more often than not, they are only getting to critical security alerts hours, if not days, after they have been originally flagged. So what do we do? This is exactly why we came together to start Dropzone. We are building AI security analysts, leveraging large language models to drastically increase the capacity of cybersecurity teams. Our AI security analysts sit alongside of the human security analysts. They autonomously investigate all the security alerts by replicating the techniques and investigative mindsets of expert human analysts. With these AI agents, they reduce the amount of manual analysis and mean time to response by 90%, and allowing human security engineers to focus on only the real threats as well as other critical projects. To help achieve this, we have developed a patented multi-agent system that implements a very well-known alert investigation methodology. The system starts by proposing multiple hypotheses on why the alert was triggered in the first place, and then pivots around different data sources to gather additional metadata to help support or invalidate each hypothesis. After that, it refines each hypothesis, and the loop repeats until there is only one remaining hypothesis with a lot of supporting evidence. Our product is delivered as a SaaS and can be deployed within 30 minutes. It connects to our customers' existing security stack via API. It adapts to their environment, and it immediately starts to investigate alerts end to end. It doesn't require any coding, prompting, or chat, and can be operationalized by security teams of any size and maturity. Today, we are already processing security alerts in production from over 200 organizations, ranging from tech scale-ups like Zapier and UiPath to global 100 enterprises and security service companies like ECS. To get this into the hands of security teams, we have assembled a group of industry experts. Right now, we are a team of 34, and we recently raised an additional $37 million in our Series B. With this additional capital, we are planning to further accelerate go-to-market and accelerate the development of additional AI agents that automate other chunks of manual and repetitive work within cybersecurity. At Dropzone, our mission is to scale cybersecurity beyond human limits by weaponizing large language models. We are leveling the playing field in cybersecurity by augmenting every single security team with armies of AI agents. With our technology, perhaps for the first time ever in the digital age, cyber defenders can finally take back the advantage, push back the attackers, and regain the higher ground. Thank you.
What does it look like to step beyond responding to threats and actually preempting them and being on the offensive, as you were suggesting?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So offensive security right now is not our current focus, but there has been other startups building AI specialized to automate, for example, penetration testing. In fact, I believe recently in the last couple of months, there's actually a kind of like a global ranking of penetration testers. And an AI startup actually climbed to the first place on that scoreboard.
LLMs and cybersecurity are not a very obvious match. So how do you exactly use one for the other?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So when we look at cybersecurity, specifically alert investigations, the subconscious thought process that a human security analyst goes through is actually very similar to kind of being a detective in the physical world, right? You see some bloodstains, you see some mud, and you start to formulate different investigative directions, and you start to perform this kind of investigative graph traversal within your head. And during that process, there are a lot of tool usage, there are a lot of judgment calls, there are a lot of intuitions, like should I continue chasing after this lead if the neighbor sounded a little bit suspicious? So these are kind of the subtle cognitive tasks that we are leveraging large language models to automate.
Awesome. If there's no more questions, thank you so much, Edward, for being on stage.
Thank you.
Patrick from Clarify today. He's building the future of CRMs, and we all have something to complain about with a CRM that we've used in our life. So really excited for the future that he's building here. Please welcome Patrick.
My name is Patrick. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Clarify. We're a 21-month-old startup, 24 people, and very excited to be building the autonomous CRM. How many people here in this room have used a CRM before? Raise your hand. So pretty much everyone, if you're an investor or founder, you've used your CRM. How many people love their CRM? Raise your hand. I see a few people which are Clarify customers, so thanks for being here. I really appreciate it. Yeah, I mean, this is one of the biggest problems in SaaS. It's the largest category, and it hasn't really been innovated on in the last couple of decades. And about 3 years ago, we had this massive innovation. I think you all might have heard about it with LLMs and transformer models. And we thought that this might be one of the best ways of solving this problem, which is how do we automate a lot of the mundane work when it comes to things like sourcing leads, prospecting, closing, and supporting your existing customers. And what we found is that specifically for us, we wanted to actually empower high-impact companies to build better customer relationships. We had this problem ourselves, having previously founded companies and using other CRMs in the market, and been frustrated. And we were wanting to build a solution that every other startup out in the world would love. And so today we actually have over 500 companies relying on Clarify to really power their go-to-market operations. Companies like Sift, Ravenna, Tiger Beetle, you name them, effectively trying to build the best CRM for early-stage startups out there today. And CRM's got 99 problems, and we're trying to solve all of them one bite at a time. It's effectively trying to swallow a whale. And effectively, they're overly complex. You need multiple tools. You need folks on the revenue operations side to stitch them all together, and a ton of cash that you're throwing at these tools. And inevitably, you waste a ton of time, yourself, your reps, not working with customers, but effectively trying to wrangle the mess. And then teams operate in silos. You have your pre-sales team in a tool like Apollo. You have your post-sales team in a tool like Gainsight. And effectively, you're trying to stitch all this together to kind of get a consolidated view. At the end of the quarter, you're still not quite there. And so we're building a unified platform for go-to-market teams. And effectively, this starts with the raw data. We have a bunch of integrations and APIs to connect to all the different tools that you use, things like your Google Workspace or Outlook to pull in all your emails and meetings, to your Slack account to pull in all the rich context that you have there with your team, and to LinkedIn as well. From there, we basically auto-create all the entities for your company, the people, the companies, the relationships. We build both behavioral and predictive segments on top of this. And then we have automation for things like workflows to help you get shit done at the end of the day. And all of this is with ambient and agentic workflows built in. I'll talk a little bit about how we kind of use AI and LLMs in particular to break down the jobs to be done. At the end of the day, we are an applied AI company. And this isn't just for sales teams. Again, it's for marketing, success, and support. So what are the building blocks of AI? The one thing that we like to talk a lot about are the core ingredients that make Clarify different. One is we have kind of a consolidated data layer. We're trying to build this unified data layer that does things like auto-enrich all the data that you have across your emails, your meetings, your product data as well for usage, and then all your call transcripts to kind of create this consolidated customer 360. This is the proverbial thing that everybody's been chasing for the last 2 decades. And then we enrich it with AI as well. So we can do things like internet research to go gather a bunch of information about your customers. Again, we have conversational intelligence built in. So if you're all familiar with AI, one of the best things that you can feed it is unstructured data. And so we do that. We feed it our calls, our meetings, our emails to be able to extract things like, hey, is there a deal here? Should I create a deal automatically? Should I update the fields automatically here? Should I summarize the relationship with this customer? And score it. Is it behind schedule? Is it on pace to actually close this quarter? And then everything from AI copilots. We didn't start by building an AI copilot. We started by building the foundation of all the things that ladder up to it, which I'll show you in a minute. And then being able to do things like ask natural language queries on top of this data, have AI draft you your follow-ups. And if anybody's ever worked in sales, this is the leading indicator of whether or not you're going to close a deal, is whether your sales hygiene is good. And so we try to automate as much of that for you as possible. And this is how we kind of broke it down. So if anybody here familiar with tech trees in general? But you can think of a tech tree as all the building blocks that kind of ladder up to what you really want to build. And for us, we really kind of started at this unified data layer of getting all the context into Clarify. From there, building all the discrete, like mini agents that we would need in order to be able to power a copilot. And so all this comes together to really kind of power the entire workflow for Clarify. This has been something that we've been building now for about 21 months. And that helps us do a lot of things, but primarily automate the busy work that you have today. We don't want to actually abstract yourself from the customer. We want to actually empower you, provide you superpowers when it comes to managing your entire go-to-market. And so for us, busy work is things like classifying, hey, is this email a high priority? Should I actually know this? Is this meeting a high priority? How do we map the relationships across the people that you're talking to already? And then how do we do the busy work of updating your CRM? So typically the two major problems with CRMs is they're out of date and the data quality is garbage. And so we try to keep that up to date as best we can. And then things like reasoning, everything from being able to build audiences and do segmentation inside your CRM that can power marketing and sales automation to being able to chat with it in just natural language, as well as extracting things like customer insights, which for me as a product person, I can tell you that's the best delightful thing that we do today is actually be able to pull out all the feedback that we get from customers. And then things like summarization. So meeting and deal summaries, everything from task automation, so I don't have to go manually remind myself to create the tasks, they're automatically done for me, and then do all the follow-up generation. The thing that we really thought about quite hard is not just building this agent layer on top of the existing tools, but fundamentally rethinking about how this platform should be designed from first principles to be able to do everything here that we're describing. And our customers have seen a lot of this really enable them to be more successful. Companies like Ravenna, who are based here in Seattle, kind of wrangled the tool sprawl internally to replace their entire go-to-market tech stack on Clarify. With companies like Paramark, who replaced Salesforce with Clarify, plus 3 other tools into kind of a unified solution. And folks like Sift, who really cut down a lot on the admin time when it came to revenue operations and reporting and analytics, and really helped change the way that they're thinking about go-to-market. And this wouldn't be possible today without this amazing team that we have here in Seattle. We're 24 people. We're hiring. If you're an engineer in the room looking for a new role, let me know. And we have amazing investors here, including folks like Madrona. So happy to be up here and answer any questions that folks have.
So this is a much needed application, the CRMs. As you said, that nobody is happy with the current CRMs.
Yep.
So I have a question on the most important part is the leads funnel. So how is your system designed to create the correct lead funnel based on the need of the industry? And the other is that how the system helps you to do the opportunity qualification?
So we're a event-driven system, so you can send us any event data. So if you have people signing up on your website, whether or not that's a PLG company or a marketing-led company, if somebody's submitting a form, you can send us all that data in real time. From there, we automatically create all the records for you. You can actually create an ICP field where we use AI to actually score whether or not this person qualifies against it. So it's effectively an AI prompt that will then score the opportunity for you. And then if needed, you can use a workflow to automatically route it to the right rep depending on territory or score.
So do you have the access to collecting the emails and the phone numbers of the right person, the person?
Correct. We have our own waterfall enrichment built in to Clarify. So when somebody actually signs up and you send us the data, we'll actually go find a bunch of other information about them. You can actually go create your own custom fields as well that are then connected to internet research, and you can define a prompt. So soon we'll be adding things like technographic data as well. So company uses X, score them, those types of things.
All right. Yep. Thanks.
Yeah, and one thing I will mention is that actually it's a free product that you can sign up for. We actually give away the CRM for free. We're only charging for the agent. So anybody can sign up in this room, get started for free.
So, for a lot of early stage startups, they may already have a system in place. How do you guys deal with migration? You're like talking about replacing the beating heart of the business.
Yeah. So it's a great question. So we help our customers migrate today. We actually have an integration with HubSpot. So if you have HubSpot data, we can easily import all that into Clarify. Long term, we'll be building bidirectional integrations with the existing CRMs out there, namely HubSpot and Salesforce. But we've actually been really successful migrating dozens of people from existing CRMs, mostly because they're expensive and cumbersome to use. And happy to have a conversation with anybody that's looking to migrate as well.
You might have covered this earlier, but one of the biggest challenges with CRMs is integration with outreach tools, right? Like how do you build clever outreach? Do you have plans? I know you touched a little bit on this, but do you have plans to sort of go after that market as well and integrate that into Clarify?
We do. We're building an all-in-one solution. So right now we actually have sequencing and effectively prospecting in early alpha today for our customers. So effectively can do everything from managing your deal to actually helping you find customers and reach out to them.
Thank you.
It's all built on the same workflow engine.